get your anger issues out of the way here for the show. So
it's only fitting there'll be a jackhammer outside for a good part of this show, thanks to construction. So excuse our noise.
Yeah, that's a fun little addition to the show as well too. So stick around for all that and more here. Again, welcome to the Tuesday, December 27th edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, the post-Christmas, I ate too much podcast, the post I hope I won my championship podcast, all that and more. Sponsored by No House Advantage. I'm Joe Bartel. You can find me at JB Fantasy Sports alongside me, Jake Letarski, as always. We're running down the top waiver wire pickups and FAAB recommendations ahead of the fantasy football championships for a lot of people. Possibly doing our award show, talk about the best free agents next week, although we'll have to see as the schedule rolls out for the final conclusion of our renditions of the podcast. Obviously, stick around on every one of our network podcasts. We got plenty more action on the gambling side of things, getting you set for week 17 and 18, the playoffs too. A lot more to come from the RotoWire side.
And I believe even after the season's done, we're going to do some kind of weekly show. Maybe not us exactly, but they like to keep it. It seemed to work pretty well for the numbers last year to keep it going year round. So you can definitely expect to continue hearing from us once in a while. We'll
talk about the Monday night recap, which should probably not take much time given the trouncing the Chargers put on the Colts in just a second. Before we do so, word from our sponsors, No House Advantage. No House Advantage is changing the game by offering the most dynamic fantasy sports platform available today. Play pick-up contests versus other people for a shot at winning the big cash prize. Download the app, choose a contest, select your player prop, earn points for correct picks, and climb the leaderboard for your shot at hundreds of thousands of dollars every week. You can also test your skills versus the house and 20 extra entry if you hit all your picks bet up onto 5 player props, over-unders, or individual player matchups across every major sports league, including NFL, NBA, MLB, PGA, MMA, and NASCAR. Sign up now with promo code NHAWIRE, that's NHAWIRE, at nohouseadvantage.com, or download the app in the app stores to get a first deposit match up to $25. Make sure to check out No House Advantage today and experience daily fantasy sports redefined, because it's not just how you play, but also where you play. You won't want to miss out on this. Well, the Colts would have probably been fine missing out on the Monday Night Football contest. Of course, Nick Foles got his rendition as the starting quarterback for the Colts.
Exactly.
And it should be mentioned, we'll outline the game, that somehow Jeff Saturday has decided to announce Nick Foles will theoretically start the final 2 games of the season for the Colts. The fact that Jeff Saturday chose to do that following this performance is a little bit stunning to me. I know, literally during the broadcast, Troy Aikman and Joe Buck were like, can't wait to see Sam Ehlinger. It's about time to see Sam Ehlinger. And they've been saying that since quarter 2 of that. That's how bad it was for Nick Foles. And the Colts end up losing 20-3 to the Chargers, who clinched a playoff berth.
Exactly. The Colts didn't even show up. We get some more Nick Foles. Great. The Colts had so much prime time this year that it was rough. And obviously, who knew that with no qualifications or appropriate experience, it wouldn't go well for Jeff Saturday. Just who could have guessed that? But interesting dynamic in Indy with the Zach Moss, Deion Jackson situation. I feel like that's worth discussing a little bit here. Deion Jackson didn't get a single carry the entire game. Granted, they only ran the ball 14 times because of the game flow and situation here. But Moss carried the ball 12 times for 65 yards. Moss also caught his only target for 5 yards. Deion Jackson was a little bit involved in the passing game. 3 catches, 3 targets, 9 yards, but pretty much a dud if you started Deion Jackson in deep leagues. We were on Moss just based on last week's distribution, and it definitely seemed to carry over. There's been a viral tweet going around about apparently Jeff Saturday and Deion Jackson getting into actual shouting matches.
Oh, really?
Over his usage, because before Saturday, when Jonathan Taylor was out and missing time, and even when Jonathan Taylor was around, Deion Jackson had a role, right? He was getting carries. He was more involved in the passing game. You'd think when your quarterbacks are Matt Ryan and Nick Foles, you'd utilize dump-offs and a back like that, but that definitely wasn't the case here. So, Deion Jackson, you don't really feel comfortable starting or rostering any Colts, really, but Deion Jackson can go to the cut list this week because, there's no reason to think that after 0 carries in week 16, anything's suddenly going to change in week 17. Even Jordan Wilkins got a carry. So,
right. Yeah. Multiple, right? He actually got a few of the targets as well, too. That was one of my shockers. I had anxiously on pins and needles that Monday Night Football contest because I had mentioned earlier I was in 7 championships, and 2 had been decided by that point. But for the most part, it was if Justin Herbert goes off, I will either win some leagues or lose some leagues. And if Zach Moss goes off, I will absolutely lose some leagues. And to be honest, he should have went off. Zach Moss was averaging over 5 yards a carry for 3/4 of that contest. He was looking really, really dynamic. And of course, the Chargers' run defense plays a part. The Colts throw, 25 times, 30 times compared to just 14 or 15 carries. So you mentioned the Deion Jackson part. Not even getting Zach Moss more involved probably is a fault of the Jeff Saturday Colts as well, too.
They should have used the Atlanta Falcons playbook here and only passed the ball 15
or
times.
Carolina Panthers. We'll talk about that. One of those
Panthers.
pickers as well, too.
Yeah, exactly. And then, on the Chargers side, we can touch on that. Pain, a lot of pain for me. Only needed 14 out of Herbert. Felt pretty good about getting that. Obviously, with the Colts didn't show up at all. There was
Chargers
no real
didn't
need.
have to either.
Yeah, there was no real need to pass the ball. It's weird. The Chargers didn't it's like they didn't win this game, but they didn't lose it. However you want to put that. But hey, you know what? They're in the playoffs. Herbert, I actually scared myself looking at Herbert's game log where I was like, okay, I need 14.8 points or something out of him. And then I looked and he's been under that in 5 other games this year. So he's been more painfully inconsistent than you think. I think he falls down probably out of the top 5 for next year with how many. You can expect some improvement maybe, but he was missing a lot of his receivers for a good chunk of the year. But still, the inconsistency has been tough to deal with.
We were just talking about this with the tech team, and they were excited about this proposition because I guess they hadn't heard of it. If Sean Payton is the head coach of the Chargers next year, I will take Justin Herbert among my top 5 quarterbacks. I think the Joe Lombardi offense is just not well suited for Justin Herbert.
What is leading us to believe that he'll end up their head coach? Do you think Staley's gone after making the playoffs?
Yeah, I think if the Chargers lose in round 1, if Sean Payton wants to be your head coach, you take Sean Payton to be your head coach. I think and he seems to be leaning towards that direction.
That's pretty much what they said. He only wants the LA jobs.
Not even the Rams necessarily. Honestly, you look at the talent that they have and lack of picks. I think it's that he wants a young quarterback, and not that the Bengals job is open necessarily or anything like that. So it's I think Justin Herbert is primed. And to be fair, if I was Sean Payton, I would want that too. I still think Justin Herbert's one of the more electric quarterbacks in the league. And if you have a coordinator that wants to take advantage of that bazooka of an arm, you might be talking about one of the better ones for the next decade if you get it right. So I'm all for that.
Well, and Herbert might have got me my point threshold had Keenan Allen not barely stepped out of bounds on that play in the first half.
Stepped out of bounds?
I did. I went outside. I got up and did something different, just assuming that it was good, and then apparently it was not good. But unfortunately for Keenan Allen owners, you weren't here in the semifinals if you drafted him, most likely. But he did get 14 targets, caught 11 of them for 104 yards. That would have been helpful if I was still alive in Dynasty. But he was really it in the passing game here. Even Eckler, they didn't need to go to him a ton. Mike Williams, 4 for 76. Gerald Everett, non-factor.
Yeah, first time in the entire season that he got 0 targets, right? That was a weird thing, too.
Yeah, I know. I had to double check to see he wasn't hurt because he's not even in the box score.
I wrote the notes yesterday.
Yeah, Parham only had one catch, but they tried. Herbert likes to go downfield to him because it's just kind of a big target. It's such a weird thing.
They had a 25-yard pass or something like that, called back and a holding penalty. It's a really nice play. I wrote about it in Parham's notes. You can see on the site that they do utilize him as a deep threat. You'd think at 6'8", he would be more of a goal line option, but he and I think it's because Keenan Allen's so good, Mike Williams is so good, Austin Eckler is fantastic, could have 2 consecutive 20-touchdown seasons. So you don't have to go to the 6'8" guy, but that's where I would have thought Parham's value is. But no, it's more so, I see our 6'8" guy who's also fast matched up on a 6-foot safety. Yes, I will throw him the ball every time. And that's where he's kind of used in that same vein. You could have also won if Herbert had just thrown those touchdowns instead of handing off to Eckler, but that's also something to factor in for next season, too.
Yeah, when they went for it on 3rd and short, Herbert almost got into the end zone for a rushing touchdown on the sneak, and then we'd have been pretty close to being in business, but alas, not the case. Eckler, Eckler, great game for Eckler. He's carrying me to a Stake League championship berth, so happy about that. And Eckler, out of a lot of the tough early running back picks, Eckler was one that worked out for people for sure.
Yeah. Anything else you want to discuss about the Monday night game at all?
Oh, we probably overdid it already.
All right, so let's turn to the quarterback options. Obviously, last week was interesting given the bevy of injuries to guys near the top. And, of course, Lamar Jackson didn't end up playing, so you had Tyler Huntley. It was whether or not Minshew was going to be a starter with Jalen Hurts. That looked darn pretty, Jake. That was a great call. And to be honest, And I admitted on Twitter, I want the record to show, you had convinced me by the end of the week that Gardner Minshew was the correct play.
I was starting to get nervous because I had told like several friends too who were in a quarterback situation, like you got to put Minshew in. I'm like, oh man, there's a lot on the line here. But they got into a shootout and like he turned the ball over a couple of times, but also the Devontae Smith celebration was awesome, by the way. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that.
He put the ski mask on, kicked the door open, and stole from the Salvation Army bucket.
I did see it.
That was fantastic. Yes, that's as good of a bucket celebration as you see there. But yeah, Minshew Mania could still be going. The thing is, though, is because they lost and they still have yet to clinch the division, still have yet to clinch number one, it seems like Jalen Hurts is making a push to play this week. They're home against the Saints, who are number 10 against opposing quarterbacks. So, I mean, we'll see how it goes. I mean, on paper, the Cowboys weren't great against opposing quarterbacks either, but Minshew still managed a 24, 25-point fantasy day. So he's definitely in there for streamers. He's in the mix again, I would say Minshew is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, of course, if he plays.
Right. No, I completely agree. Somebody was asking, do they consider picking up Gardner Minshew or Mike White? And I think that's actually a really good talking point for what primarily is going to be the decisions. Mm-hmm. We had also mentioned Russell Wilson as a streaming quarterback. Boy, that would have been great if you were the Rams defense. That's what we're actually suggesting when we're saying Russell Wilson as a streaming quarterback option. I really think it does come down to Mike White or Gardner Minshew this week, provided Jalen Hurts is out. And in this important contest, Zach Wilson, forget this is a Thursday game, absolutely stunk up the joint. Jaguars end up winning again, now looking like they are in the driver's seat for the AFC South. In fact, they are leading right now, although it could still come down to that week 18 matchup against the Titans.
I don't know. I feel like Flacco could have won that game, but anyway.
Possibly.
Yeah, anybody else. But anyway, Mike White
certainly could have.
Yeah, Mike White certainly could have. He's cleared of his ribs injury. He must have, found doctor number 28 to give him the clearance, if you followed that story at all this week. But he's absolutely involved. I'm thinking Brock Purdy still has to be in the mix here because he's still only 37% rostered. He's at the Raiders, who haven't been anything to write home about in terms of pass defense. And Purdy has been consistent, if nothing else, more consistent than Herbert, over his last few. 18.4, 23.6, 18.7, and 20.3 are the last four fantasy point totals for Purdy. Nothing that's going to blow anybody out of the water or win a matchup, but he's absolutely been productive enough. So I think Purdy gets involved in that conversation. I might even rank him ahead of White and Minshew, especially if Minshew ends up not playing this week, for Hurts. So those guys are in the conversation as well. A couple other quarterback situations we have to note, though. Looks like Malik Willis is the starter the rest of the way out for Tennessee. Ryan Tannehill done for the season and maybe even the postseason, getting surgery for a high ankle sprain. So apparently it's bad. I don't get crazy excited about Malik Willis. He's not someone that I'd pick up and start over, Minshew, Purdy, or White in the championship game. But, two quarterback leagues, he might be relevant. Has the Cowboys, who are 14, and Jacksonville 27 to end the year. And a lot of this conversation is relevant for a lot of people because I don't think Tua is going to play this week. Tua Tagovailoa
second concussion that he suffered.
Well, yeah, exactly. The first one was a back injury. This season, and the fact that symptoms have just popped up. It looks like Teddy Bridgewater, he's going to take the practice reps this week and is preparing to start at the Patriots, who are 22 against opposing quarterbacks. So Bridgewater is, in the mix, maybe given the receivers, but I still think I'd play Purdy, White, and Minshew over Bridgewater. And if you're really feeling frisky, Mac Jones, 18%. He's home against Miami, as long as the weather's okay there, which it looks like, we had no idea last Tuesday, right? That we knew a blizzard was coming in Madison, but I could have never thought, the sweeping, frigid temperatures, sub-zero temperatures across the country, especially in the Midwest here. It looks like this week is going to be the opposite. It's going to be, a lot nicer. We're going to get back to the 40s somehow in Wisconsin, and weather is definitely not going to be as much of a factor. So, that's something that
that's the disappointing part about doing these shows on Tuesday. Obviously, we're missing out on crucial information for some of these injury-related stuff. But from a weather perspective, that's the difference of being in the championship or losing in a lot of situations where you can project it. Oh, hey, look, it's going to be like 10 degrees and it's the Ravens and Browns. Yes, I'll recommend the Ravens defense because there's just going to be no scoring involved. Or the same thing for a lot of these different situations. we're not weathermen. We are also not doctors. So it's very hard for us to do all that projecting. But it was very clear, really, by Friday that there was going to be weather involved impacting a lot of these contests. I think I saw a stat that said it was the lowest total amount of unders hit in a given week since like 10 years ago.
Yeah. And I imagine, and that's with the lines adjusting for less points too, right?
Right.
So that's pretty wild. Hopefully we get back to the high scoring ways this week. I mean, I still put up $1.50 in stake, but some of the other leagues that I needed to come through in, not so much.
Yeah, you're going to be helping me in a lot of line positions, Jake, because you did again correctly call that Gardner Minshew one, which is going to be on I think a lot of people's minds if you're still dealing with the quarterback position overall. So just to recap, Minshew, Purdy, and Mike White. How do you rank those three from a streaming perspective?
I think I roll Gardner Minshew number one.
Okay.
And then Purdy number two, just because of consistency. Then I put Mike White, and then I throw. Oh God, it's between Teddy Bridgewater and Mac Jones. I don't think we need to get that far.
We don't literally those three.
Minshew, Purdy, White is how I would do it. And of course, if Minshew ends up not playing, then that's a separate thing.
I actually like Purdy. I think number two. I will go by Mike White every single time. I think Mike White is the call for my starter, and then Minshew 3. Mm-hmm. But all three, I believe, will be top 12 in fantasy scoring this week. Like each one of them will be totally fine if you are really streaming quarterback options. No,
okay. Top 12 is tough, but okay. I would guess at least one of them makes it there.
Somebody said
can we somehow translate this into a board bet? The wheels are churning.
Yeah, we'll figure.
Someone suggested in the chat.
Somebody in the chat said they might start Mac Jones because their league gives points for dirty hits. I like that comment a lot. That's why Derwin James is also a first round pick in that league as well too, which we didn't discuss in the Monday Night Football game, getting ejected for one of the most obvious targeting tackles I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, we're talking about Derwin James?
Yes.
That was brutal.
the dirty hits. All right, let's stop and get a word from our sponsors, Blue Wire. Again, we've been doing this now for a while. Video audience will be right back. Audio audience, stick around. And we'll get to the running backs right after that. Okay, so we're back and discussing the running backs. We had mentioned Zach Moss and Deion Jackson as the possibly 1-2 combo in terms of pickups. Tyler Algier as well, too. We'll get to that in a little bit. Royce Freeman, who had filled in for the Texans. Not so much Khalil Herbert. Chuba Hubbard. And then we also had Haskins as well from the backup perspective for Derrick Henry. Zach Moss still was fine. Clearly was getting a lot of the carries. My concern now, if you are considering Zach Moss in the championship, is does this offense do enough to warrant getting Zach Moss used throughout all four quarters? I don't know if that happens after watching Nick Foles just self-combust through the first quarter of that Chargers game. Yeah,
that's a tough one. I have to double-check the matchup this week. They've got they're at the Giants, who are 23 against the run, and then if you play Week 18 or have a points total situation there, the Texans are dead last. So it's a nice rest of season schedule for the Colts. In theory, I doubt they win either of those games. But I think Zach Moss at 44% is probably your top running back stream / pickup this week. But he's right neck and neck with Tyler Algier for me, who is technically under our threshold at 49%. He's actually probably over it now. He was just 49 when I looked last week because the distribution here. I would actually go as far as putting Cordero Patterson on the cut list because 18 carries on 59.2% of snaps for Algier, while Patterson 8 carries on 36.6% of snaps. But also even more noteworthy is Patterson just one target, Algier 5
that's
targets.
Huge to me.
That's massive. So based on that alone, I think Algier's which one of these incompetent offenses is less incompetent. But also Algier has the Cardinals this week, who are 27th against opposing running backs in standard formats. So I think I would give the nod to Algier this week, but Algier and Moss are the guys that you're looking at.
I agree, although I'll mention Chuba Hubbard. As somebody who had been completely out on Deonta Foreman in the Panthers offense altogether, I had actually dropped Deonta Foreman, unfortunately, in a few leagues. Both Deonta Foreman and Chuba Hubbard, interesting names going against the Buccaneers this week in what will likely decide the NFC South Division battle. I believe they're facing the Buccaneers at least. The way the Panthers are using both those guys, you might be able to get running back 2 production out of them in deeper formats.
Yeah. Hubbard definitely makes that list for me. He's only 38% rostered here. And then the other guy, of course, I'm going to double check in the matchup. It is Tampa Bay. They're 6th against opposing running backs here, which is interesting here. Matchup based alone, I'm probably rolling, Algier and Moss over either Hubbard or Foreman, I think.
I would agree. Well, I think I'll take the Panthers guys over Moss because of Nick Foles. Yeah, I mean because of the Colts offense, but I agree. Algier is the top candidate if you are in this position.
The Panthers' distribution is just weird because it's a much tougher matchup than Detroit, and then Blackshear can come in and vulture some. So I would feel better about Moss than either of those guys. Actually, we also have to talk about Khalil Herbert again at 40%. He was pretty disappointing. 6 carries for 7 yards. I don't know about really flexing him in a pinch, but the Bears are at the Lions, who gave up very solid. Let me see. Yeah, Bears are at Detroit. Who gave up solid. Ran over, but by the Panthers. Exactly. That's what I was trying to say. Thanks for picking me up there. But yeah, I mean, really, it's all retreads in the running backs. Except for a couple of names that are maybe a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, I guess the one retread that I want to give you some more runway on is James Cook, who at this point I think you can safely say has found his niche in that Bills offense. They had traded for Nyheim Hines, but we did that podcast live while the trade was going on. You thought, okay, that's your pass catching guy. It turns out that James Cook is both the pass catcher, but probably more importantly for that Bills offense, the change of pace running back and the way they're utilizing him is now giving me, as somebody who's a critic of James Cook all season long, a bit more consistency and reliability if you are looking for a running back to reflex play.
Yeah, I mean, his 11 carries were tied for the second most he's had all year in a game. The 99 yards is a season high for him. And, of course, he's scored now in back-to-back weeks. So, yeah, I mean, the matchup was a little soft at Chicago, and it's much tougher sledding at Cincinnati this week, who are 7 against opposing backs. But Cook, yeah, he just misses our threshold at 52%, but I think you could make just – based on the offense that he's in and the growth of his role, I think, and he was up to 41.9% of snaps, which wasn't too far off from this 56.5% that Singletary had. So,
real quick with the Moss thing, I don't know how much you factor this into your plans, Jake, but the over/under for that game between the Bengals on Monday night, 49.5 points, easily the highest of the Week 17 slate. And you had mentioned the weather as well too. I mean, Cincinnati isn't quite the Midwest, but it shouldn't be like, what you'd expect to be January 1st type of weather in Cincinnati. That will be a good contest from that perspective. Just something to keep in mind.
I didn't actually think about where to rank Cook because he was outside of our threshold, but you could convince me he's number one compared to those guys that we discussed.
I would still have Algier. I've been really impressed with him for the last month or so, and that Patterson.
Yep, I'm gonna swallow that Algier pill. Yeah, he's startable in the championship game. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think Cook is in the same tier for me as Chuba Hubbard and Deonta Foreman. I would have Khalil Herbert and Moss a little bit lower. And you had also written down kind of Gainwell.
Yeah, I got a couple dart throws here. Gainwell's one of them at 14%. Again, I don't love him, but he surpassed Boston Scott in both snap shares, carries, and targets this week. This is the second. Jerry notes in his backfield breakdown that this is the second week in a row that Gainwell has set a season high in both raw snaps and snap share. And it's maybe a little noteworthy that Miles Sanders did fumble for a second straight game, and he wasn't all that effective against Dallas. Now, of course, Philly has the Saints this week. It's not an easy matchup by any means, but Gainwell's in the mix if you're getting desperate there. And also, I'm not worried about Derrick Henry missing Thursday Night Football, but just note that he did not practice or did not participate in Monday's walkthrough, and they have the Cowboys on Thursday night. Hassan Haskins is technically the backup there now. If you're a Henry owner, I guess it probably can't hurt to grab him just in case.
Yeah, you have a cut list that's pretty in depth, I would say, if you are considering cutting people in Week 17. Yeah. Kudos to you because you've made it to the championship.
Yeah, I mean, you got to cut somebody to pick these guys up, right? I mean, Cordell Patterson made my cut list. I don't think, unless your guy is like currently actively injured or has some injury tag, you don't really need to worry about your handcuff options necessarily. So Alexander Mattison, Kareem Hunt, those types of guys that aren't really producing a ton standalone value, no real reason to roster any of those. Also, if you're in a pinch or you're making your roster better, there are some situations in which I could see cutting Antonio Gibson. He was only out there for less than 30% of the snaps, while Brian Robinson 44% of the snaps, most notably 22 carries to 5 for Gibson. Jonathan Williams was out there for 26.4% of the snaps. You would have thought with their game flow and them being behind, that would favor Gibson. And that wasn't necessarily the case. I mean, you don't really trust him to just start him. So if you know you can't start him, then he's in cut consideration because it's Week 17.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Let's move over to the receivers. We had talked about a lot of guys like Treylon Burks and Elijah Moore, and even Chris Moore, who were possible candidates and all ended up being duds.
Yeah, I mean, news changed during the week, right?
It did. However, we had spent a little bit of time on Rashid Shaheed, which kind of was force-fed at the end, ended up being really good despite the cold weather conditions for that contest. And then there's Jahan Dotson, who might single-handedly win awards at the end of the season for our Frasers, given the touchdown stretch that he's been on when he's been healthy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Carson Wentz, possibly your starting quarterback for the Commanders at some point over the next 2 games.
I would like that less, but
I don't think it hinders things too much. Jahan Dotson was a guy that, at least of the rookie first rounders, that I was way lower on. He has been impressive, but the way they utilize him in the red zone really is tremendous. And I think he becomes one of the top pickups at wide receiver this week. I'll let you give the breakdown for him, but I'll pose this question now, Jake. Do you play Jahan Dotson this week or Christian Watson? That was what one user was asking.
Well, first we got to make sure Christian Watson's healthy, right?
Bingo.
Bingo. And, that's been the one knock on Watson is, I guess, staying on the field has pretty much prevented him from what could be a Rookie of the Year award. But, who knows, maybe he'll still get that. I would probably roll Dotson, given the touchdown streak, a little bit more consistency.
9 targets this past week.
Yeah, it was the team high, 9 targets, caught 6 of them for 76. Again, scored in 3 consecutive weeks, finishes the season versus Cleveland, who are 11 against receivers, and versus Dallas, who are 29 against receivers. So I would say that, if you needed to flex somebody, Dotson, our cover boy this week, could quite possibly be the top overall pickup.
I 100% agree.
If you have to flex,
of a flex.
Yeah, if it's Algier or Dotson, or Moss or Dotson, or James Cook or Dotson, I think I'm rolling Dotson in just about all those scenarios here. You can't. A couple of random touchdowns could certainly be fluky, but 3 weeks in a row, it certainly isn't any fluke anymore. So definitely looking at him. He's the only real receiver that I'd pick up and be really comfortable with this week. Even if you did have Burks or Elijah Moore out there. I mean, again, those recommendations last week, every single one of them, with Moore having Wilson as his quarterback and other Moore having Brandon Cooks come back. Again, news changes during the week. It's tough, but out of the whole list, I've got a handful of guys here, but Jahan Dotson is your top receiver and top overall pickup for the week.
I always say that we're disciples of Mario Puig. Mario Puig does a lot of different content for us, a lot of the draft coverage, but I do the SiriusXM show with him every Friday. Mario had tipped me off on Isaiah Hodgins probably 4 weeks before he became Isaiah Hodgins, and certainly this past week as the Giants were fiercely trying to offensively make a difference here. 8 catches on 11 targets, 89 yards, and a touchdown. Daniel Jones was looking at him quite a bit. I feel like for the first portion of him starting, it was either as a blocker or we're going to just get a first down and use Isaiah Hodgins. Over the last 2 weeks, he's developed into, I think, one of the top targets for the Giants, and Darius Slayton is still there too. And I know people are going to be like, well, Isaiah Hodgins isn't good, whatever else. You don't have anybody else to throw to if you're the Giants. And I think Isaiah Hodgins in a deeper league actually is a totally fine play, even with Richie James also factoring in.
Yeah, I mean, Richie James did get 12 targets, caught 8 for 90. So he's kind of in the same vein. I mean, either of those guys could see similar volume, and, whoever scores the touchdown is your better play. I guess I could see, 14 team, 3 wide receivers, multiple flex, like in our dynasty format, for example. I could see flexing Hodgins in the title game and hoping for the best. So yeah, he's definitely in the mix. It is a tough finish though. They're home against Indy, and if we paid any attention Monday night, it's that might get 4 or 5 targets in the first half before they just run the ball out.
That's
with
Saquon Barkley, massive game.
Yeah, that's a big spot. And then if you're playing Week 18, they're at Philly, who's no one there, but the snaps and the volume are definitely safe. I mean, Slayton was the only other receiver to see the field in that game. So, but both Hodgins and Richie James you're obviously picking up and starting before Slayton. They're both guys that are in the mix this week, I could say.
How about our boy Romeo Doubs now, especially with Christian Watson having picked up that injury in the first half against the Dolphins? Doubs 5 targets last week, 6 targets again this week. I wish you'd get more involved. The 22 snaps last week was less than ideal. Not last week with the Giants, the Dolphins. The week before, he played just 22 snaps compared to Cobb, Lazard, and Christian Watson. But he is a factor every time he plays.
Yeah, I mean, Lazard is the guy that's 83% rostered, whereas Doubs is only 17%. But you can make a very good case that Doubs is the better play over Lazard. It depends. It could vary a little bit week to week, but 5 and 6 targets since returning. Great matchups ahead. I mean, the Minnesota pass defense has been absolutely atrocious for the last several weeks. They're ranked 30, and if you do need him in Week 18, he gets the Lions, who are ranked 31st. I'm not worried about weather at Lambeau really this week, so
no.
You should be able to come air it out. And Doubs is out there. He's a guy that I'd at least be picking up. You check, is the last guy on your bench or your second defense better or worse than Doubs, and there's a decent chance that Doubs is the better.
So the only issue now is you always do the second defense thing. I actually think you're trying to block your opponent in whatever way. Second defense, quarterback.
Yeah, that's fair.
Now we are not even constructing our roster for the rest of season. You're constructing your roster to beat your opponent.
Mm-hmm.
And roster spaces where you're taking away a Jalen Hurts sub in or maybe a flimsy wide receiver is just as valuable as anything else.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, is like we're going to highlight a few defenses worth streaming this week, but I don't think any of them are necessarily home runs. So, I guess you could take it or leave that strategy.
That's fair. Greg Dortch, 11 targets. DeAndre Hopkins, nearly non-existent. Marquise Brown didn't do much for the Cardinals, too, who are down to their third-string quarterback in Trace McSorley. I don't know. There was reports that the Cardinals would consider trading DeAndre Hopkins in the offseason. We have no idea if
Cliff Are they really going to just blow that whole thing up?
Oh, sure they are, because they're dumb. Cliff Kingsbury getting fired. No idea what's happening to their GM situation as well, too. I don't know. And I don't know if that means Greg Dortch becomes a thing over the next 2 weeks. But it is a stat line, like you mentioned in the rundown. Mm-hmm. Can't really ignore what he did against the Buccaneers this past week.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, who knows, what happens if Colt McCoy comes back if he looks at him the same way. But again, I had to note it. We're really grasping at straws here. I mean, DJ Shark's another one at 20% only. He's been consistent and helpful, for some playoff teams here. And the other name I wanted to mention, Russell Gage, he's wide receiver 3 in Tampa over Julio Jones, 55% of snaps. He's the clear wide receiver 3, but he's getting some looks. So, it's interesting.
I noticed there's no Jameson Williams on this list, Jake. I was told by you that Jameson Williams is going to be dominant over this.
The whole thing, the whole allure with Jameson Williams was like the unknown fact. Like, what kind of athlete he is. You just didn't know about his usage. I mean, obviously he's been safely dropped for weeks now, but like it was, you're picking someone up and hoping for a home run, and obviously that didn't leave the park.
For what it's worth, redraft leagues next year, I will take Jameson Williams every single time. It's just a hard injury to get over. But it's very clear, whether it's Jared Goff or whoever else, the Lions know what they're doing offensively. And that matters to me, especially if DJ Chark, who's on a one-year contract, does not come back to the Lions. That's a very easy one-for-one fill-in. I love Jameson Williams as a prospect, and I just had to give you a little bit of teasing there as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Jameson Williams really actually used a lot of capital on him next year. I think Chark would have to not return. Probably because, then you've got 3 guys that you can, mess around with.
You have MVS in the cut list. Thank God you mentioned that so I can air my grievances as well. I guess I didn't lose because I was able to advance, and I still moved through a nothing burger from MVS, who has been just awful ever since I picked him up, and he was inconsistent even before then. But man, I am very happy to get rid of him in this league that I am having to roster him. That's because Cooper Kupp has been hurt and didn't have a whole lot else from a wide receiver perspective. He's been miserable for the Chiefs, I think, for the last month or so.
Yeah, absolutely. So I put MVS on there. You maybe cut him for a while.
Yeah.
And these games are a little bit fluky because the ball was a block of ice, especially in Kansas City. They were one of the coldest games this week, but still, no catches is noteworthy. And then, looking at Minnesota, Kirk Cousins threw the ball 48 times and Thielen only caught 1 pass.
Definitely weird.
Yep. Yeah, he was targeted 5 times. I mean, I wouldn't feel great starting Thielen against the Packers. Actually, you know what? He's kind of a Packer killer, so never mind. Maybe I'll take him off the cut list.
The KJ Osborne's the one that I would just be like, no, even if he throws it 40 times, I don't feel like KJ Osborne against the Packers matters. And it might actually work out well if they do choose to have a guy like Rasul Douglas in the slot or whatever else.
16 targets for TJ Hawkinson. I was so close in Stake League to benching him for Evan Ingram.
Oh,
because Ingram had outperformed him in the last 3 weeks, and I have
fine too,
I need to fade myself when it comes to starting tight ends. After flipping between Fant and Henry and getting it wrong for 6 weeks in a row, I'm fading myself when it comes to tight ends here. The popular saying, but no, Hawkinson 16 targets in that game. That's crazy. He caught 13 of them for 109. I mean, tight end wasteland. Maybe he'll take my Stake League team to the promised land.
Absolutely insane. And speaking of tight ends, let's talk about those waiver wire guys. Before we do so, a word from our sponsors, Monkey Knife Fight. Football is almost over, but Monkey Knife Fight has all the NFL action you're looking for, and also has plenty on the college football slate as well too. On Monkey Knife Fight, there's no sharks, no salary caps, no math. It's just easy to play, easy to win. Daily fantasy player props. Join now at monkeyknifefight.com to get your first game free. Then use promo code RWNFL to get your first deposit matched instantly up to $100. What are you waiting for? Join Monkey Knife Fight today. Last week we had mentioned Taysom Hill and Jawan Johnson. We also talked about Chige Kwanu for the Titans. As soon as Malik Willis was mentioned as the starter for the Titans, I immediately dropped Chige everywhere. That worked out perfectly because they just choose to never pass the ball. And I'd imagine Thursday against the Cowboys will be a similar thing. Taysom Hill ended up being totally fine if you had to roll with him at tight end. Juwan Johnson, on the other hand, I'm not super consistent. There is the ever immortal, always injured. It seems like Logan Thomas, who is at least healthy at the moment for the Commanders. They'll be going against. They went against the Niners and had to pass obviously a ton. 8 targets, you could do a lot worse.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much exactly how I put it. I mean, he finished with 6 for 35, which is nothing, crazy. But, in today's tight end landscape, if you don't have Kelsey, if you don't have Hawkinson there, you can't even trust Mark Andrews, these days. You're thinking about benching Mark Andrews seriously for a whole lot of people, especially if Lamar doesn't come back this week. So, 8 targets for Logan Thomas. That's enough to make me consider him at 6%. I would go back to my boy Dulcich after, 8 targets for him as well. I finished with 4 for 39 in his score. He left early with a hamstring injury. So, that and just given the general state of the Broncos, maybe I forget who tweeted this, but someone's like, wouldn't it be funny if this was the Albert O week 17?
Oh, God. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
If that decides to happen, I mean, who knows? Hackett's out, and maybe whoever they have is probably going to be better. Jeff Saturday would be better at this point. So, okay, all right, maybe.
we can debate that one a little bit.
All right, and then lastly, this week's Juwan Johnson special. If you want to burn yourself by chasing past touchdowns, Shane Zylstra is 0% rostered. He caught 5 of 6 targets for 26 yards and 3 touchdowns. Obviously, you can't really rely on that, and the film is out there, right? Defensive coordinators are going to find a way to at least put a body on him in the red zone, but clearly he's a red zone target.
Well, just to put into context the Shane Zylstra thing. So I did a 30-round best ball on the NFFC. And I'm mentioning this strictly for good karma, Jake, because I'm in 3rd place. 1st place is a $400 prize pool.
There you go.
3rd place gets you just your money back. So I want to get up there. I'm only like 50 points away. In a 30-round best ball where you're trying to get as many positions as possible, Shane Zylstra was never even picked. So, I mean, this is the bottom of the barrel, the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's where we're at right now. Also, fun fact, his brother also on the roster as well for the Lions as a tight end as well.
Fun. Yeah, that is
that's
fun.
Literally fun fact. That's all it is.
So pick up the right Zylstra if you're gonna.
Which Zylstra you're picking up? There are only 2,
but
both on the Lions, both play tight end. I don't mind the Dulcich play. I'm not going to go Logan Thomas, mainly because I really want to manifest Jahan Dotson winning people leagues, because he's been kind of the guy that's been riding or dying from a free agent perspective.
Yeah.
After last week where I got burned starting Nick Folk, I lost my 2 leagues. Both those leagues, Nick Folk got -2 points, and I just wasn't aware of what the weather would be an impact this week, and I should have been more on top of it. Like Jason Sanders, with the overrun of the Packers-Dolphins game, he at least wouldn't get you negative. But in so many of these contests, these kickers did very little, and Nick Folk lost me 2 of those. We had talked at the top of the hour, worth repeating again, Midwest will not have as bad of weather as we had this past week. So you probably will have more options at kicker and defense. But let's just run through this a little bit more.
Yeah. Less options at defense. There's more options if a record-setting amount of unders are going to hit. So, there's a handful of defenses that I like this week. Again, I don't think there are any crazy home runs, but a few of the options I wanted to highlight. Of course, the Steelers are loaded with so much individual talent, and they're only 43% rostered. They're on the road at Baltimore. It's a rivalry game kind of, the Baltimore will maybe turn up. But if Lamar Jackson misses another game and it's Huntley, I would absolutely look to the Steelers as a streaming defense and readily available at 43%. I listed all the teams. I'm going down the list. And one that I like, the Chargers. They obviously had a great game against Nick Foles this week. That doesn't mean a ton. They're home against the Rams, and I believe I don't know if the lines changed, but it was about 6.5.
That's exactly where it's
right. It's not like Vegas is smarter than most people, and they're not ready to buy some kind of Baker Mayfield is good now narrative, right? So I would actually look at the Chargers at 35%.
Can I pause you real quick?
Yep.
The only concern I have with that, and I think that would be a more than fine play if you don't have the Chiefs who are going against the Broncos available, or I think the Giants against the Colts. That's the other obvious 2 plays. The Chargers will be fine. Unlike the Colts, who just abandoned the run for whatever the reason, the Rams will not. They will rely on Cam Akers and that bunch to literally carry Baker Mayfield, and that's where the Chargers are vulnerable. So I could absolutely see Cam Akers doing well, even better than last week when he had
you don't think there's a suspension in play for Derwin James, is there?
No.
Yeah, getting kicked out of the game is probably enough. He'll get a nice hefty fine.
Yeah.
Obviously
Joey
that
Bosa
would change things too.
Could return. Joey Bosa will make that run defense better. Not good enough where Cam Akers will not be a factor, but just that is a thing to consider as well. Too.
Yeah, and then a couple other ones I highlighted. I mean, the Commanders, they're home against Deshaun Watson and the Browns, who, I mean, Nick Chubb has not been good, which is rough for a lot of fantasy teams, and just the Browns' offense has been rough lately. So Commanders, you think about, they're in the mix. Jags are at Houston.
I don't mind it.
And the Jags are fighting for a playoff. They're fighting for their playoff lives. You know, I don't generally like the road team in this situation, but it's a low over-under, and it's the freaking Texans, man. So even with Cooks back,
Jaguars favored by 4 despite traveling to Houston.
Exactly.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that is pretty wild. And then, like you mentioned, I like the Giants against Indianapolis based solely on what I saw last night. You know, I don't. There's not much I like about the Giants defense, but I don't think Foles has it, or whoever they start has it, and nobody really has it there for the Colts here. So
that is my top streaming option. If you don't have the Chiefs again going against the Broncos, who almost have to look better than they did Christmas Day with Nathaniel Hackett gone. I think the Chiefs are still my top play, favored by 13.5 points. I would look towards the Giants, who have, I think, as of right now, the lowest over-under on the Week 17 slate.
I'm kind of Steelers, Chargers, then Giants, then Jags, then Commanders.
I think,
but Steelers, it depends on the Baltimore quarterback.
I think their pass rusher, Ojulari, for the Giants should be back and healthy, which is continue to get healthy. That matters to me, given the Colts offensive line allowed 7 sacks last night. Did you see 7 sacks against the Chargers? And there's guys like Chris Rumph. And if you have heard of Chris Rumph, kudos to you. You have been very clearly following the draft for the Chargers for some time. He had 2 where he absolutely waxed Braden Smith, who's supposed to be a good right tackle. He looked embarrassingly last night. I will take the Giants, I think, as my top streamer over any of those guys because of that pass rush that they have.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, I tried to pay attention to that game. It was rough. It was rough, okay. But yeah, I mean, Foles threw 3 picks and was sacked 7 times. So, and the Giants are at home too. So, to give me the home team, I'm sure that'll be one of the. If you go by my rules of home team and low over under, I'm sure that'll be one of the top of the equation.
I guess we'll have one user question, Jake. So somebody asked, should Haskins, the back of the Titans, be his top priority with Derrick Henry? DMP for practice. You and I both talked about we don't think Henry is going to be seriously missing time. But yes, I would imagine if you have Derrick Henry, Haskins would be one of those guys you consider, or is there a different back for the Titans that you'd rather have?
I mean, Haskins is I'm going to quick look at the breakdown. I mean, nobody else I don't think got a carry for the Titans last week. Let me just break this down quick. It was Henry on the field for 73.8% of the snaps, Haskins for 24.6%. Both of them got 2 targets. Henry had 23 carries compared to 0 for Haskins. I mean, given only 2 running backs saw the field, if one of them's out, you have to imagine, that the other guy, it's his. But, you want to make – I guess you make Haskins a priority, but you got to think about some of these other guys. I mean, if you can go get Algier or Cook or something like that, they're probably better plays than – I think
Algier is a better play over Haskins. I actually think one of the Panthers guys, if not both, Chuba Hubbard and Deonta Foreman, could still be fine given the workload they get. The question could be James Cook. And that's where, like, as you, who has been on James Cook for most of the season, would you play – let's just say Derrick Henry's out, whatever.
Yeah, okay.
Derrick Henry's out. Would you play Haskin or James Cook in the over-under we talked about with the Bills and Bengals, highest one of the
Yeah, I mean, I'd be playing Cook, I think.
Okay.
Even if Henry's out. I mean, because remember, this is a Malik Willis-led offense for the rest of the way out here. So it could just be completely dysfunctional,
Yeah. There you go, Isaac. If you are looking for the replacement for Derrick Henry, it might even be on your roster with James Cook, or he talked about having Chuba Hubbard as well, too. So any other thing you want to mention?
Cook, Hubbard, Algier, and those guys are probably higher priorities than Haskins, but who knows? He could be in a really deep league, and Haskins could be all that's left.
Anything else you want to discuss here before we round things out here, Jake?
I don't have a ton. I mean, college basketball is heating up, especially we got college football bowl season. Badgers tonight. Yeah, once that kind of works through, it's college basketball time to shine. So we got betting picks every day here for you on the website, and a lot of DFS content and tools as well. So definitely check that out, and of course follow at RotoWire CBB for all your injury data. That's definitely it's one of the best sources out there for that kind of information. And I'm not just tooting my own horn. The team does a great job there, so I'm really proud of the team and the product that they have there. So check out some college hoops content. I guess I'll plug that.
I like this. The users are discussing the James Cook play, and somebody mentioned he's related to Delvin Cook, so he's athletic. What's the one Manning brother that's not in the NFL at all, but also gets the commercials?
Yeah, but didn't he have some kind of medical?
Oh, I thought he just was not athletic at all. Maybe I should be not
Yeah,
mocking him
yeah.
at all. Okay.
I tread lightly on that one a little bit.
It's not a guarantee.
I think there was some
just
kind of
because you're related to
situation
Dalvin
that
Cook.
made him unable to play. Again, I could be completely missing the boat here too. I could be very wrong, but I would just pump the brakes a little bit on that one.
Genetics is pretty powerful, but it's not just like a guarantee. Just because you're related to Dalvin Cook doesn't mean that you're going to be like, dynamic in the same vein. I still think James Cook is fine, but I just thought that comment was funny. All right, that does it for us on the Tuesday edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast. Again, brought to you by No House Advantage. Guys, best of luck with your fantasy championships. We'll be back again for week 18. If you are still in those types of leagues, talking waiver wire pickups, giving our free agent waiver wire show possibly, and wish me a happy vacation because I'm done after the podcast. I'm not back here until Friday for Sirius XM. We're celebrating the birthday, playing many video games. God of War. I'm looking forward to that.
There we go.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good time. So,
all right, right on. Yeah, hey, I just want to say good luck to everybody, and next week we'll do a handful of pickups and maybe give away some waiver wire awards for the year. We'll see how that goes.
Schedule breaks down.
We'll see how the schedule breaks down. But thanks for tuning in, everyone.